Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Amanda and I am a neurodivergent woman. I am autistic, I have ADHD, I have total aphantasia and a memory disorder called SDAM, which stands for Severely Deficient Autobiographical Memory. This is a vlog of my lived experience as a neurodivergent person, and a lot of it is about my journey of unmasking as a late diagnosed autistic woman. Many of my recent videos have been about autism, but I just wanted to throw up here a short video about aphantasia because I kind of was having some interesting thoughts about what it's like to be and have total aphantasia, and I just wanted to share them with you. So I get the question a lot, as somebody who cannot visualize in my mind, what is it like for me to read books? I actually am a fairly avid reader. I go through cycles, I think, depending on how my ADHD will let me focus in on a book or not. But I really have always loved reading ever since I was very young. I had a form of hyperlexia, which is common in autistic kids, where I was always reading above grade level when I was really young. I never understood that other people could visualize until I was 38, and that's when I learned about aphantasia. Up until that point, I thought anytime there was a reference to visualizing in your mind, it was just metaphors. So when I was younger, I really avoided science fiction and fantasy, and I think I have maybe an understanding of why now. I really generally, especially when I'm more stressed out, I prefer books with a lot of character development and dialogue, so I don't have to spend extra brain power on descriptions. Whenever I'm reading a book that has heavy descriptions, then it's just gonna take a lot more brain power for me to read it and understand what's going on. And you know, in science fiction and fantasy, often the author has to build up the world for the reader to understand what that world is about. So I'm going to use animals as kind of an example, as an easy way to explain sort of how my brain can work with knowing information about the way something looks without actually being able to see it. So for instance, household cats. I have owned many cats in my life. I've been around a lot of cats. I've seen cat videos on the internet. I just am very familiar with what cat looks like. I can describe lots of different types of cats to you because of just this huge database of what cat means. But if you were to take an animal that I'm way less familiar with, say, for instance, a sloth, which I don't even know if I've ever seen a sloth in real life. Maybe I have at the zoo. I don't know. I don't remember seeing one before. But I've maybe seen some videos of sloths, and I've seen, some photographs of sloths, obviously, but not enough for it to be able to describe what a sloth looks like, because I can't just pull up an image of a sloth that I've seen and be able to describe it to you. So from the various sloths I've seen, I could describe that they are a furry animal with long nails that hang upside down on tree branches, and I think they have a fairly flat face, but I can't really describe anything beyond that. I don't know if they have ears, because I can't visualize it, and so if it's not a detail that I paid attention to before, then it's not something that's going to stick in my mind. So how much familiarity I have with something is going to make a difference in how I experience it if I was to be reading about it. So that's why I'm going back to the science fiction. So now that I've been watching a lot more science fiction and fantasy TV shows, and I've seen more people who have their interpretations and they draw them, and I've seen their artwork, now I have a larger database in my brain about science fiction. So when I'm reading a science fiction fantasy book, I can't visualize what the author is describing, but I have a little bit more of a database to pull up in my brain about what they possibly might be pointing to as far enough to get the plot going. So unless the way something looks is pivotal to a plot point, my brain usually just disregards it. So if a book takes place on the, I forgot the word, the main deck of a spaceship, with the captain's chair and stuff. I've watched a lot of Star Trek, so now I will have kind of sort of a vague recollection of what the Star Trek ship might look like. And basically any science fiction book, if that's where it's going to take place, it's on a ship, that's kind of like the reference I would pull from. And unless the author's description is pivotal to the plot to change that, then I'm just going to loosely okay, they are on a starship and it's going to look somewhat like Star Trek's because that's what I'm familiar with, even though I'm not seeing any of it in my mind. And for instance, if it's a science fiction book on a planet, then again, unless it's pivotal to the plot, then it's just not going to stick in my brain. So this is why I prefer books that have a lot of character development and dialogue, because I can focus on that and it builds the story in an interesting way for me. Any type of book that really relies heavily on scenery or on battle scenes really gets just bogged down in details, and I just can lose interest in those stories because I can't visualize it as it's going along. So it's just, okay, if we're, for instance, I don't remember if it's the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit, where they're going on a really long trek, like the journey. And if there's lots of descriptions along the way, it's like, okay, just get me from point A to point B. I need the next action scene that has things that I can focus on, not descriptions. And I've heard from some visualizers that as they are reading authors' words, they can build an entire picture in their head. And if they're more hypervisual, they can actually build their own movie set where they can completely immerse themselves in what they're reading, and they become part of the story in a certain way, depending on, how good of a visualizer they are and how much they enjoy reading. But that's why, I know some people just can really get lost in fictional worlds. And it sounds really amazing. It sounds like a really good way to be able to escape reality for a little way in a healthy way. And just kind of get lost in books. I enjoy books, I really do, but I've never had the ability to just completely get myself lost in the story in that way. Anyway, I hope you found this interesting. Comment down below with what your level of visualization is. If you've ever heard of aphantasia, what kinds of books do you get lost in? If you are able to visualize, do you prefer fiction over nonfiction if you have aphantasia? Because I've heard some people with aphantasia just pretty much will stick to nonfiction books, but I really do like fiction. And let's just continue the conversation in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching and supporting my channel.